welcome back. My name's Diana. This is my channel Bookish Di, and today I'm wrapping up my June in reading. So this past June, I read 6 books, which I'm actually pretty happy with. That was my goal. I ended up having some family come visit basically the entire back half of the month, and so I didn't get quite as much alone time as I normally do. So the fact that I actually did read 6 books, I'm really happy with. And for the most part, I did enjoy most of what I read. There was one book in particular that I was just kind of meh on, but we'll get into it. The first book that I read in June was Star Wars Brotherhood by Mike Chen. So this is a book I had started in May and before Star Wars Celebration, and then didn't read anything during Star Wars Celebration because that was a very hectic time. But I did finish this when I came home and I really loved it. So I'm going to have some more in-depth thoughts in a reading vlog, which should be up by now. If not, it's coming up soon, but if it is, I'll link it. Anyway, so this book is set shortly after Attack of the Clones. It's actually set after Queen's Hope, which I talked about in my May wrap-up, as well as the reading vlog. And it follows what is supposed to be a solo mission for Obi-Wan after Anakin is knighted, but shenanigans ensue. So Obi-Wan is sent to investigate a bombing on a supposedly neutral planet, Cata Nemoidia. And Anakin is assigned to be with the little kids, and he meets this young girl, Mil Alabeth, who is adorable, and I really hope she's okay after Order 66. Anyway, and he and Mil get drawn into Obi-Wan's mission. So yeah, this was really fun. I really enjoyed Mike Chen's writing. I really liked the insight that he gave us into Cata Nemoidia, because the Nemoidians, for the most part, have been very one-note, very characteristic. Anyway, so I really enjoyed that. I thought that the themes that he was exploring were really great. I really enjoyed the foil-like dynamic between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and then Rogue, who's an Nemoidian who's helping Obi-Wan investigate this bombing, and her apprentice Katar. I think that's how it's pronounced. Anyway, so I really enjoyed that foil-like dynamic and how you can kind of see the tragedy of Anakin play out there. So yeah, this was a really fun read. I really enjoyed it. I would, especially if you're only really familiar with the movies and maybe the TV shows, I really recommend picking this up. There's a really low barrier to entry, and it's really nice to get to see a little bit of the development of Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship from what we see in Attack of the Clones to where they are in Star Wars The Clone Wars when that TV show started up. So yeah, I think I gave this like 4.5 out of 5 stars. Definitely one of my highlights, and it's one that I am going to, I think, really enjoy on a future reread. The next book I read was a historical romance. This was A Caribbean Heiress in Paris, written by Adriana Herrera. This is the first in a new historical romance series from her, following a group of friends called Las Leonas. So this first book follows Lucelana, who is the head of a distillery in the Dominican Republic. She's Afro-Latina, and she is on her way to the World's Fair or World Exposition in Paris in 1889, and to sell her rum and then to settle her father's affairs back in Scotland. And there she meets James Evanston Sinclair, who is the head of a whiskey distillery who's also showcasing his wares, and sparks fly, and they enter into a marriage of convenience because it turns out the easiest way for Lucelana to get a hold of the trust fund that her father left to her is to marry. And in order to get his distillery out from under his no good father, James also needs to marry as per the terms of his mother's will. So they enter an American marriage of convenience, and things unfold from there. So this is a book which overall I did enjoy. However, I always forget that sometimes Adriana Herrera is an author where I'm just like, am I too ace for this? Because one thing that I actually really enjoy in romance is getting to see the relationship develop between characters. And this one is very much like insta-less. Like, the two characters see each other and they're like, oh, he's hot. Oh, she's hot. And for me, insta-less doesn't really, it's not one of my favorite tropes, so it wasn't something that I necessarily enjoyed. And there is an element of miscommunication in this book where due to their own issues, Lucelana and James sometimes don't say important things to each other, and it kind of comes to a head later. So so those were my big frustrations, but things that I liked, I really enjoyed kind of, with historical fantasy, so much of it is set in like Regency and around that area. So I really liked getting to see a more late Victorian and getting to see something as magical as the World's Fair, because it was this really amazing, I mean, there were issues like colonial issues and everything, so like it wasn't perfect, but it was really interesting to see this point in time from a viewpoint like Lucelana. I also really enjoyed the relationships between Lucelana and her friends, who are going to be the other characters in the series whose names are escaping me right now. So that was really nice. And I also did like James's side plot, which I won't get into too much for spoilery reasons, but there was some really interesting dynamics with him and his family. But yeah, the Incest kind of, I don't know, it really kind of took me out, and I felt like it added some unnecessary complications to the plot. I don't know. So I think overall I gave this like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I do like Adriana Herrera's writing. I definitely plan on picking up the next book in the series, especially because I think she's doing something really interesting with this project. I'm really eager to see what comes next and what stories she's choosing to tell in this universe. The third book I read was another romance, contemporary this time. This was The Romantic Agenda by Claire Kahn. This follows Joy, who is asexual and in love with her best friend Malcolm, who is also asexual, and they have been friends for about 10 years. They met in college, and now Joy works for Malcolm's company. And they've always been very close, to the detriment of Malcolm's relationships. And Joy has always kept the fact that she loves Malcolm close, like a fairly close secret, because she thinks that they missed their chance and that he doesn't see her in that way. And things change when Malcolm invites Joy on a weekend getaway with his newest romantic interest, Summer, and Summer's best friend Fox, who's also been invited along for this adventure. And so Joy is like, well, I want one last chance to show Malcolm that I love him and that we should be together. And during that time, Fox comes up with a way of, he's like, look, I'm not sure about Summer and Malcolm for whatever because I think he's worried that Malcolm is going to take advantage of Summer. I can't remember I think he's worried just like the dynamics aren't great. And he's like, look, why don't we start saying that you're fake attracted to me, and we'll go from there. And so this is like a mix of fake dating plus my best friend's wedding. Yeah, so I did enjoy this. I thought that this was I really enjoyed getting to see an ace-centric romance. There are some parts that are kind of like Ace 101, but I think because this is, a trad published romance where readers might not have a lot of experience with asexuality and what that means, I think that makes sense that this was included. I really thought Joy was a very interesting main character, especially kind of her, like how much she owns being ace and being beautiful and really liking to show off her body because it makes her feel good, but not necessarily because she wants to have sex with someone. She kind of gets into the pitfalls of dating and what happens when she is kind of attracted to someone, but not necessarily sexual, like a sexual romance. I also liked that we got different points of view for asexuality because Malcolm is also ace, and so we get some insight into how he views relationships and how it is and isn't different than Joy's. I will say this is something that might catch some people off guard, but so Joy and Malcolm, despite the fact that, she is in love with Malcolm, he's not the main romantic lead, it's Fox. And so some people might be like, why are they billing this romance like this? And I think part of it is that we don't get a lot of queer platonic relationships in trad romance. And that's what Malcolm and Joy are. They are a long-lasting queer platonic romance that has, because of some long-standing patterns that both Joy and Malcolm take part in, has become quite toxic. So while the romance part is really important between Joy and Fox, the other like big component is Joy and Malcolm trying to sort out their own relationship and trying to get it to a healthier point than it is at the start of the novel. So I liked that. I thought there were times where the prose was a little clunky. And I kind of wish it had taken place longer than a weekend. Like, I understand, like, that was kind of the premise, but I think, I don't know, I would have preferred a little bit more time with Joy and Fox's relationship. But overall, I enjoyed this. I would give it like a 3.75 out of 5 star. I definitely want to check out Claire Kahn's other work. She's mostly written YA. I think this is her first adult novel, but I definitely plan on checking out other things that she has published in the past, as well as anything she puts out in the future. This was just, it was really great to get an asexual romance, as well as have it be by a Black author. I think that was just really enjoyable, and I would really recommend it. So 3.75 out of 5 stars for that. The next book was probably my big disappointment for the month, and that was A Spindle Splintered by Alexi Harrow. This is a novella that she published last year, and it's nominated for the Hugos, which is why I picked it up. And it follows a young woman named Zinnia, who is essentially living on borrowed time. She has this disease that is slowly killing her, and I think at the start of this book she maybe has 6 months left. She's running on very limited time, and she's someone who's been obsessed with the Sleeping Beauty myths, and her friend throws her this kind of last party, and during that time Zinnia pricks her finger and finds herself thrown into the fairy tale multiverse, and ends up dealing with a princess, or finding a princess, a Sleeping Beauty, who is named, not Charm. You can see how much I remember from this book. Primrose, that's her name. Anyway, I did not like this book. I don't know if it was because like a number of my friends aren't like super high on Alexi Harrow, and so that kind of colored my perspectives, but I thought this was a really shallow book, or novella. I thought that it felt very 90s in the way that it approached fairy tales and quote unquote girl power. I wasn't really a fan of the characters. Like, I don't really remember a lot of details about them. I thought that how it approached the fairy tale multiverse was okay. Like, this was just very bleh for me. I don't know what it was, but just the tone, the plot, the character, like, nothing really worked for me. I think I would give it like a 2.5 out of 5 star. Yeah, this was not a good introduction to Alexi Harrow for me. I'm really tired of Tor novellas it feels like getting nominated just because they're Tor novellas. And this kind of feels like that to me, and she's just kind of an author who keeps getting nominated for stuff. Like, her books where she's had short stories nominated. I don't know, this was just, it was just so bland. Like, nothing super sticks out to me with this. So I don't know what else to say. This is just, I didn't like it. Like, I can see why some people might like it. It just, nothing about it super worked for me. Like, I don't think it's a bad novella. Like, I think there was more thought put into this than Upright Woman Wanted by Sarah Gailey last year. That novella was a mess. But yeah, this just didn't work for me at all. Fortunately, the next book that I read did work for me. That was Lake Lore by Anna Marie McLemore, narrated by Avi Roque and Vico Ortiz. So while I do have a physical copy, I did listen to the audiobook after Adria at Perpetual Pages mentioned it because they said they really enjoyed it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be doing a lot of driving in June to and from the airport to pick people up. So might as well use that time to listen to an audiobook. And I am so glad I did. This was, Oh, this was so good. This was so healing. This was beautiful. So this book follows two Mexican-American teens, Bastian, who is trans-masked, who has ADHD, and Lore, who is more gender fluid, although they tend to lean more mask, who has dyslexia. And in the town where Bastian lives, there is a lake which has a world underneath it. And Bastian, as a way to manage their anxieties, it creates alebrijes, which are these beautiful pieces of art that are small, that are like like animals kind of mashed together, that are beautifully painted. And they create them to kind of reflect what their anxieties or kind of where they feel they messed up, and then release them under the lake. But what ends up happening is that the world from under the lake starts bleeding through. And then you have Lore, who had visited the lake when they were young and then is moving back with their parents after an incident at their own old school. And so during the story, you find out what exactly happened. Like, things are hinted at, but then towards the end, you find out more. And there's just so much I loved about this. Like, the friendships that Bastian has with their friend group, that Lore gets drawn into, the relationship between Bastian and Lore, and then also with them and their families. Like, it was so wonderful. Like, I love Macklemore's writing, and this was just perfect. This was like the perfect antidote after A Spindle Splintered. Like, this was just beautifully written, beautiful characters, beautiful plot, excellent narration. Like, if you can get the audiobook, I really recommend it. And this is so small, my only small critique is because I was listening to the audiobook, I could hear a lot of the dialogue tags, and that was just something that I was kind of aware of, because I've seen John Scalzi talk about how, because so many of his books were audio and then he started writing some like audio first pieces, he's just been aware of dialogue tags and kind of cutting them down. So I do think maybe that could have been something. That's really my only critique. This is 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it so much. This was perfect. It definitely one of my top books of the year, and just thank you, Anna Marie Macklemore, for writing the perfect pick-me-up after A Spindle Splintered, because this was so wonderful. I loved it so much. The final book that I read in June was another contemporary romance, and it was You Had Me at Hola by Alexis Daria. This follows a soap star, Jasmine Lynn Rodriguez, who is dealing with the fallout from a previous relationship where her ex basically broke up with her via the tabloids. And then you also have Ashton Suarez, who is a telenovela star who got killed off in his last telenovela. And they are working on a Netflix adaptation of a telenovela called Carmen in Charge. And after a disastrous first meeting, sparks fly and they start getting into a relationship, and things go from there. So I really liked this. This is my first time reading Alexis Daria. I had picked this up mainly because I thought the cover was really beautiful, and it was just kind of a nice change of pace from how a lot of illustrated covers are. I thought this was just really distinctive, and I have some friends who actually really who really enjoy her writing. So I'm like, you know what? This is at the bookstore. I'm gonna pick this up. I got this last year, I think. Anyway, I liked this a lot. I liked the dynamics between Ashton and Jasmine. I really enjoyed kind of the behind the scenes we get on this TV production. I liked the fact that even though we do get that third act breakup, that kind of the seeds of it were planted throughout. So it wasn't something that came out of left field. Like, you could see the exact triggers for what was going to be causing that third act breakup. So I really liked that as well. I also really liked their relationships with their respective families. So I know I've mentioned this many times before, but one of the things I really like about romances is when they also include relationships that the leads have with other people, and this got me that in spades. Like, not only their family, but their people on the crew and everything. So there is a little bit of insta-lust here, but it didn't feel as overwhelming as a Caribbean Heiress. because I think we do get some more lead time between like the, oh, he's hot, she's hot, and then them actually consummating the relationship. You get more of them kind of developing their friendship, which I really appreciate. So yeah, I think this one is hovering like at a 3.75 or a 4-star out of 5. This was just really fun. I really liked it. I borrowed the second book in this series. So it's the Primas of Power. So the second one is Jasmine's cousin, Michelle. And yeah, this was just really fun. So if you're looking for a good, steamy contemporary romance, I would really recommend this. I read this in one afternoon at the beach, and it was the perfect beach read. So yeah, loved it. So that was my June in reading. One particular sour note for me, and an otherwise fairly good slate of books. So do any of these sound interesting? Do you have any particular genre that you like to read at the beach, since it is, you know, now beach weather? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.